Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation podcast network.
Welcome to this episode of Talking Head Pain, the podcast that confronts head pain head on. I'm your host, Sarah Shaw, Associate Director of Diversity, Equity and Inclusion and Community Outreach at the Global Healthy Living Foundation. I have been living with chronic migraine for almost 10 years, and I'm very open about navigating life with my chronic disease journey, as well as my experience living with anxiety. This podcast will be a window into other patients' lives as they navigate their own journeys living with chronic pain, migraine, and mental health. Today, we're joined by Shelby Blondell, singer and songwriter who lives with chronic migraine and dysautonomia. Shelby, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
We're happy to have you here and chat all things migraine and chronic illness. So I'd like to start off the podcast by asking our guests, if you could use one word to describe migraine, what would it be?
Life-changing. I think for me, migraine has so many meanings, and it really has changed my life in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, migraine is the number one enemy I have because it steals a lot from me, but it's also brought so much joy into my life, which sounds really weird to say, but throughout this chronic illness, there's been a lot of downfalls of it, but the community has been incredible, and that's all been really life-changing. I think it's taught me a lot about life and how to kind of push through all of it and lean on people and see the strength that we all really have.
I love that answer. It is life-changing. As someone who's lived with it for, I think it's almost 9 years now. In the beginning, it was very isolating. And then Shelby, you mentioned community. That has been a huge thing for me, is finding this rare, I think, community of like-minded people who can empathize and understand like what you're going through, and then also offer like advice to kind of navigate that. And that's kind of how I found you, actually. The migraine community brought me to you through Headache on the Hill, and I got to learn a little bit more about you. And I want to dig into the next big aspect of your life. I know I'm wondering it. Which came first, migraine or singing?
Migraine, I think, did come first. I've had migraine really my whole life, starting from when I was 3, but music came within that. Music was one thing that really helped along those journeys of pain and migraine. So I wasn't necessarily performing, but I guess a little bit in my own right within hospitals and playing on little pianos in playrooms.
That started from a young age. I think you said since you were 3, right? So it kind of seems like it was woven into your experience. Have you ever written any songs about chronic pain that kind of, or migraine, that has kind of helped get you through?
I have, and pretty recently, I put out a song called Takes a Day. I struggled for a while with writing the song and finishing a song that really spoke to all of the things that we face with chronic illnesses, which is the unpredictability of it and feeling alone and isolated. Even though there is an incredible community, everyone's stories are similar in some ways, and we face similar things, but they're also different. That's one thing that's special about it. But I wrote this song called Takes a Day, really just about, I think, that feeling that I know I get a lot of times with migraine. Sometimes it's really hard and you wonder what the next hour is going to bring or what the next day is going to bring. And sometimes the reality is it just takes a day. It takes a moment or the next day, and you might not feel it today, but tomorrow's a new day and something else is going to come.
Yeah, I feel like for me, your song, It Takes a Day, is very similar to what I tell myself all the time in my head of one day at a time. We just got to get through this next migraine attack, get through this next anxiety attack, just take everything one step at a time. And I know that there's a lot of mental health that comes along with living in chronic pain, whether it's migraine, whether it's POTS, whether it's a bunch of other different chronic illnesses. And I know for me, for some people who live with migraine, they can't tolerate like loud noises or sounds. And sometimes I'll get to that. But one of the things that I kind of learned about myself a couple of years ago was music is actually really, I don't want to say healing for me, but like it gets me through migraine attacks. Like sometimes I'll be in the car if I'm driving and I have a migraine attack, I can turn the radio up, and not that it's distracting or dissociate. I guess it is kind of distracting if I'm really thinking about it, but music doesn't seem to trigger me in the way that like sometimes like clanging of pans or closing doors, like music kind of transports me somewhere else. And I want to know, how has that affected you? How has living with migraine affected your singing? And how has singing impacted your migraine?
I love hearing, though, from you how music impacts your life because I think that's so special. I think music does have that ability to be that universal language that helps us all through all of our things. And I know for me, it depends on the day, really. Like music, if it's always a song that's a little bit soothing, like classical music or some jazz or something that's not something super sharp, like the sound of pans clinging, those types of things help. I think it's almost like the vagus nerve stimulation. But if it's super loud noises, one thing I've noticed for myself, especially with music, is especially when I'm playing a show, I've learned, this might sound stupid, and if anyone else is a musician, they might understand this, but for me, sound checks are the worst.
Hmm.
And I think that's especially when there's a drum involved or other instruments because there's so many things being tested, or a stationary drum beat or a stationary something that always starts way too loud and it takes a while for it to come back to where it needs to go. So a lot of times I'll even step out if band members of mine have to do certain sound checks or if other bands who are playing with us for the night have to do it. I've learned that that's something I need to do for me so that the night can go on. So it's those little kind of tricks that you learn you have to do.
Right. Yeah. Especially the thing when you were talking about sound checks and the drums. I was immediately transported to when you're at like a conference or a concert and the mic is too close to the speaker and you hear that awful, awful, like, whatever it's called. Like, oh gosh. So I imagine that you probably get that a lot as a performer.
Yeah, and it's not fun. It always makes those next days just
Horrible. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. When I get in really horrible migraine attacks and I'm just like super irritable and just like exhausted and cranky because you're in pain, sometimes I will rage with my migraines. So sometimes I'll put on some Linkin Park, some Numb, and just maybe I won't blast it, right? But maybe I'll have it up like a little Chester. This is what this is all about. And I don't know, it's sort of therapeutic for me. I also come from a background. I played the violin all throughout my middle school and high school, and my violin is sitting somewhere behind me that I need to reopen and re-engage with the world. But I've been so worried that I haven't interacted with my violin since getting chronic migraine. I was doing it for such a long time and it brought me so much joy. And I do know the vibration of the strings, and you put the chin rest like right here. And I'm like, I need to work through my fear of like re-engaging with that. But I'm wondering if there have been situations where you had to, I know you brought up the sound check, where you've had to kind of pivot and figure out how to re-engage with life now with migraine.
Yeah, and I think similarly to your story, I think I do find myself in bouts where sometimes I go a couple days without playing, or I kind of get in this headspace of I can't do it, or I don't feel well enough to do it, and what is this going to do? And it's kind of that fear because when you live with chronic illness, there's kind of this always lingering fear that's there. And I do get into that a lot of times, but then I have to remember, which is not always easy to do, that music always has a way for me to help in the moment. And so a lot of times, even if I am feeling poorly, playing music always helps. And it changes, right? Like sometimes I know for me, especially when I'm not feeling well, sitting down at a piano is like the most therapeutic thing I can do. And I don't know what it is about it, but I feel like it's one of those just kind of mindless, careless things. I can just sit there and go for hours. I love playing guitar, but there's a difference for me when I need to kind of just feel better.
Mm-hmm.
Piano always seems to have a way to do that. It's something special about those keys.
I was just about the same thing. I'm like, it's those keys. It's those keys. I know that's what it is. I do not call myself a piano player, but I have dabbled a little bit and I don't have the long enough fingers to extend to do all the things. But I don't know. It's something about those keys. Just simply hearing a piano start a song or end a song, I really vibe with it. We can talk about music all day, every day, but I want to get into more about like last conversation that we had. We were really chatting hard about insurance issues and how it really messes up our lives.
Oh,
I know that you dealt with it, and I don't know if you're still dealing with it, but what has that journey been like for you with insurance really getting in the way of your care?
it's so hard because insurance in itself, just going to doctors and managing your illness is a full-time job. And then insurance, dealing with insurance and medication, that's a whole nother full-time job that I've seen in my history. I think especially with migraine, a lot of medication and treatment is really new. And so I think that really makes treatment hard. And insurance has always been an issue for me, just going through multiple steps to get something, and insurance telling me you have to try many things before the one thing that your doctor prescribed, which delays treatment and pushes things back further. And then that does a lot of things. It delays your treatment, it causes stress and time away from things you could or should be doing for your health. And it's frustrating. It's hard.
Yeah, it really is. Are you now at a place where you've been able to beat the insurance people, if only for temporarily? Because that's where I am right now. It's okay, you have it for a year, we'll check back in another year. And I'm like, oh, can you just approve it for the rest of my life? But are you now in a place where at least you're getting some treatment to get back to baseline?
I am happy to say that at the moment, yes. And I'm going to knock on this wood table. It's finally in a spot where insurance at the moment is doing fine. The medication, I've got some really incredible providers and physicians who are really wonderful and also really stay on top of things and try to fight as well.
Amazing.
Which that's hard too, because they shouldn't have to fight as hard.
Exactly.
Also, because it takes away from their time with other patients and makes me feel bad.
Yeah, and they're the doctors. Like, why? Like, why are you? Anyway, I could go on and on.
Yeah. When your doctor knows what's best for you and is going to help, that should be enough and should be good.
You mentioned you have some really great healthcare providers and a team, and I think that's the goal. If you're already going to be sick, why not have a good team to at least support you? What does that support look like from other people in your life, from your family, friends, colleagues? Do they support you, or how can they support someone living with migraine?
I am lucky that I have a pretty good support system and they understand. And then they check in if I haven't answered them in a while, if it's a bad must sleep all day kind of thing. And I feel really, really blessed for that. And I think it's different every day what we need. I think sometimes it's the messages that make you feel better is when people remember you had a doctor's appointment and they send you a, hey, hope it went okay. If not, call me, or those things, right? That's a big support thing that might seem silly and little, but it really does make a big difference for all of us, because when people don't know, they don't know, and you only know what you know. But to know that other people are there really means a lot.
I love that. I love those little things, like you said, that they remembered you had a doctor's appointment, or after treatment, how are you feeling? Is it any better today? And just innocent little check-ins. I think the world can really take a page out of the people in our lives that actually are doing that. And like you said, it seems small, but it's actually really big. And for me in my journey in the very beginning, I hid it. I hid that I had migraine. It was very heavily stigmatized. It still is. I was also young and I was like, there's no one my age living with this. So it felt super awkward to tell people, okay, I have this neurological disorder and all these things. How did you navigate that? Because you've been living with it for such a long time. How did you navigate those conversations and when you first started speaking more openly about it with people in your life?
And I think for so long, I was not necessarily in denial, but I fought so hard to pretend like everything was okay, to that point of then being so much worse off when I had to push myself to rest because of the fear of people seeing me as different. As I got older, migraine symptoms started to get much worse. So actually hiding the head pain became harder because a lot of the other things started forming, the balance and speech issues and brain fog and nausea, all those things. And that's much harder to hide. Or it was for me. And it was then having those conversations with people of, this happens sometimes. And that's really hard. And even when I'm playing music with everyone I play with, noticing that some of these tough conversations where something might happen while I'm on stage.
Mm-hmm.
I notice when I sing, it's kind of muscle memory and it doesn't really happen when I sing. But if I talk, the brain fog and the confusion most of the time happens. So that doesn't happen often. So it's just letting people know and having to inform people a little bit better, because like you just mentioned, migraine is a neurological disease. And I don't think a lot of people see that or understand that. And that's a learning thing that needs to happen. But I think, once people start understanding that migraine is more than just head pain, they start to see it in a whole new light.
Absolutely. And just starting those conversations like you have and talking about it more openly. I know for me, especially now that I work in a job where it's all about chronic illness, it's become so much easier for me to have more confidence and talk about it and not feel ashamed and not feel like less than. Having a supportive environment where, for me, if I am having a really horrible migraine attack, that it's okay to take a sick day and to rest. And I find that I come back so much stronger and more energized than trying to push through. I'm speaking of this from a place of privilege. I have a very accommodating workplace. I know that so many people do not. And that's to what you were saying, Shelby. The more people start to understand and really see that migraine is a neurological disease, I think the more the world will hopefully change. And that's why we're having conversations like this on the Talking Head Pain podcast. And I know we're getting down to the last few minutes, and I really want to talk about mental health and self-care. We know you're juggling multiple chronic illnesses. It's not easy. You just said it's dealing with chronic illnesses is a full-time job, and dealing with insurance is a full-time job. So I sense like 3 full-time jobs, and you're a singer and songwriter. That's 3 full-time jobs right now. What do you do to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, juggling all of that?
I think you learn that as you get older with it, right? For me, yes, music is a job, but it also is a part of the self-care that happens along with it. Making time for friends to go do things like go on hikes, to go do things that are a little more careless and mindless, which as long as it's also with people who understand, that's great as well. Therapy is wonderful.
I'm a big supporter of therapy. Therapy Wednesdays.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're balancing that many things, it is important to find someone who can help you balance it and juggle it, because it is a lot. And sometimes it's just needing someone to help you think of something in a new light and a new way, or just let you know that you're doing okay. That's a big one too. But that's a big one for me. Therapy, having a friend system, even if it's just a call, and even just sitting outside for a little bit.
Get that vitamin D, get that therapy, and get that, I'm trying to think of another word that rhymes with E, but Shelby and Shelby.
There we go.
All done. Shelby, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, for sharing your experience. And really, I haven't been able to talk about singing or music so much on the podcast. So it's really good to have you and your experience on. And hopefully this reaches other people who are musically inclined, or maybe just lovers of music, and we're able to kind of relate to some parts of your journey. So thank you for coming on the podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And, anytime we need to do a Talking Head Pain jam session, then we can do that in a quiet, therapeutic way.
There we go. I have to dust off my violin and tune it right, and I'll reach out.
There we go. We've got it started.
Awesome. Thanks, Shelby.
Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Talking Head Pain, the podcast that confronts head pain head on. If you have any questions, thoughts, or suggestions for us, you can send us an email at podcast@ghlf.org. If you like this episode, please give it an honest 5-star rating, write a positive review, and spread the word by sharing with your friends and family. It'll help more people like you find us. I'm Sarah Shaw, and I will see you next time.
Be inspired, supported, and empowered. This is the Global Healthy Living Foundation Podcast Network.